Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Spanish United Radio. I'm your host, Enrique Sanchez, founder and director of Spanish United. On tonight's segment, we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
My name is William Yee.
And welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Likewise, as we had spoken through the phone, I know that you are a local celebrity chef, and I've been to a couple of your events during this year. And we would like to know a little bit more about how you started your nonprofit foundation and what got you into into culinary field into the culinary field.
Well, I'm old enough that I've had actually several careers in different industries, and this is probably going to be my last official career. Career meaning that you're in something at least 10 to 12 years.
Right.
And I'm originally from the East Coast, New York, born and raised, and
Mhm.
went through school, of course, in the during the 60s actually, and it was the time of the war. So we're looking at ways, to try to, of course, avoid that if possible. But I found myself in the retail environment in Boston, and I was part owner of a waterbed chain, very famous back in the day, called Water-S,
Mhm.
and did that for about 15 years. Then moved to Hawaii of all places.
Mhm.
But after that, I was sent to Canada actually, and I went to a different industry there. Anyway, so I got into the culinary industry only about 14 years ago, actually, 14, 15 years.
Mhm.
I was fortunate that it was a time that Le Cordon Bleu was here. So I noticed an ad on the internet. I was at one of the Starbucks. I've had no previous professional cooking experience, but I did want to get a college degree and complete my college. I never did that when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
And the Le Cordon Bleu gave me the opportunity to get my degree. And I got into their HRM program, which is hospitality and restaurant management, because I had previous management experience.
Mhm.
So that was first. And second to that was the culinary aspect. And as I graduated from the Cordon Bleu, one of my first jobs was to become a manager of a fine dining Italian restaurant in Westlake Village.
Mhm.
And I did that. I was one of four locations. But after 6 months and one day, I said, this is probably not for me based on the ownership difficulties and all that stuff. But I did give me a broad experience in how to manage a restaurant and a
Mhm.
fine dining one of that aspect. But anyway, so after that, I was also the president of the Le Cordon Bleu Alumni Association, which I did for 2 terms. And I started working for a chef agency in Beverly Hills. They got me right out of school, actually.
Oh,
Not quite know
impressive.
what that was, but I was, I'm trained front of the house and back of the house. And if your audience understands that, it's when you're front of the house, you're with banquet servers,
Right.
captains, bartenders, and back of the house, the cooks and the chefs,
Mhm.
dishwashers, etc. So I fortunately I had experience. I was getting experience in both, and so that started my career. And then one day, one of the agency people said, we have this omelet job out in Coachella, a big music festival. And,
Mhm.
I only came to California in 2000,
Okay.
so not quite familiar with that festival. I said, okay, I'll go out there. And she said, you're going to help do omelets. It's going to be a private residence, for the movie stars and all that.
Uh-huh.
And the cook we're sending you with his experience, so she'll show you the ropes. And of course, I fumbled my way through. I got through it all, didn't drop too many eggs. And then I started getting onto the radar of doing omelets. And then right after that, there was an opportunity to work as a part-time omelet chef at the Langham Hotel in Pasadena, which was the old Ritz-Carlton.
Yes.
And normally when you're a temp chef, they normally just parachute in there for that one day that one of their chefs did show up. They kept me for 7 years
Wow.
as
Awesome.
a part-time omelet chef. So I started building my rep. And in one of the events I was in was at the Northern Trust Open golf tournament. And a manager came up to me, and I was at the Bel Air Country Club, I believe, or something like that. And he says, have you ever been, you want to go to the Masters? And I didn't know that much about golf or at all. So I said, sure. And finally realizing how big of a deal this was. But they vet you, and they bring in about 200 chefs from around the country, and they pay for everything: hotel, airfare, nice uniforms, big bucks for a couple of weeks.
Mm.
And suddenly I was in Augusta, Georgia,
Oh, wow.
and this was fourth year out of culinary school.
Wow,
And they put
impressive.
me, and I wasn't with the 200 chefs cooking for the 30,000 people that were there for the week of the tournament with Tiger Woods. So they put me in charge of one of the sponsor cabins. It was AT&T. And there were three major sponsors in terms of the money they put into this, because there's no commercials at the Masters. It's all sponsored.
Hmm.
And AT&T was one of the three, Mercedes-Benz was one of the three, and IBM was one of the three. Collectively, they each put up across approximately $200 million each. So that's about $500 million of sponsors. And those are the big guys. And the small
Hmm.
guys down the road from us with like Rolex and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I was in charge of AT&T for the first year. And I jokingly said, I should have brought my phone bill because there's the chairman of the world. Maybe we could have negotiated something. But all jokes aside, we had a central kitchen just for these three major sponsors. And I would learn how to drive a golf cart, go down to the central kitchen, pick up the food, bring it up to my what they call a cabin.
Hmm.
And these cabins were like luxury restaurant homes for the corporate people of of those companies.
Hmm.
So I said, okay, I'm there for the first year, and I got a nice letter of recommendation. I said, well, it could have been an accident. Then they called me back for the second year, and they put me in charge of IBM. And if you're familiar with the Masters golf tournament at that time, this is in 2014, 15, and 16, there were only three women members of this golf club, the most famous in the world.
Right.
And that included Virginia Rometty, the head of IBM World. That included Condoleezza Rice, as former Secretary of State,
Hmm.
of course, and Dana Moore, a Wall Street tycoon. And I was in charge of them for 2 years. So that was my 3 year stint at the Masters. And that became a thing. I said, okay, I'm on the path of being what they call a professional chef, not just not just and a professional chef generally is someone who, is interested in the profession. So
Right.
he's constantly learning education.
Right. Yes, and
And
I think it's very important the aspect of education. Like what Spanish United does is that one of our outreach is to promote education because culturally, Hispanics have had like a mentality to try to shy away from education, but over time, it is starting to change little by little, especially with the second, third, or fourth generation. But I think there is a long way to go, and one way to promote education is actually through food. And as you know, Hispanic people, as with Asian people, Chinese in particular, they're all about food. So,
Mhm.
I was impressed that you have a lot of workers that are Hispanic that were there at the Christmas event last week, where all the singers from the Jetsons and the Flintstones were there. Um, like particularly when it comes like to at-risk Hispanic youth, what would you encourage these at-risk youth to get into culinary art? Let's say for example, they don't want to pursue like a higher degree or they don't want to go on vocation. Like how would you promote or encourage Hispanic young people to go in to make a career in cooking?
Well, one of the things I did during my career, my short career, is I opened up my own school. It's called the Alhambra Culinary School. And my school was designed to help cooks learn how to become chefs.
Right.
And I'm not sure. Do you know the difference, Ernesto? What's the difference between a chef
Uh,
and a cook?
yes, a chef is the one from my understanding, a chef is the one that is the one that's in charge, and the cooks are the ones that prepare everything on the not the discretion, I'm sorry, on the orders of the chef. Basically, the chef is the boss of the cooks. That's where I understand correctly, right?
Well, that's an excellent observation. In fact, you're the first one that actually would say the same words that I would. Chef's in
Okay.
charge. Everybody else says, well, the chef has to learn, has to cook every recipe in the world now. But the chef in charge means the chef has to know how to do all that stuff, or I know how to get the knowledge to do it. Um, one of my things about my personal background, my father was born in Mexico,
Okay.
and he's Chinese. And it was at the time of the Chinese Exclusion Act. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the
Yes, the
Chinese,
Chinese Inclusion Lad of 1880 of 1882. That was the only time in American history where the American government exclusively excluded a group of people based on their nationality.
very good. I should go to you for more information about this.
I'm a history major. That's my background.
Excellent, excellent. Anyway, so my father was born in the 1920s. There, went back to China, got his education, Chinese and all that. Came back to New York. Went because I guess by then the act was over in the 40s during the war. So I have an extended family because up in the U.S. right now, this I have three siblings besides myself. We're a couple of us are married, me and two, but none of us have natural children.
Right.
I have stepkids.
Hmm.
Once the four of us go, our line is over in the U.S. However, my Mexican family, which I have met only a couple of the many, is over 100 Yees under my name, intermarried into Mexican, speaks primary Spanish, no Chinese at all.
Hmm.
And that's where my family legacy is actually is 95% Mexican.
Oh, go
The
figure.
thing the thing with the Hispanic population, as you know, in California, which is what 40% Hispanic by population,
Right.
something like that. The back of the house, the cooks, often or majority are Hispanic.
Right.
Almost every restaurant you go to, and there are a few that are you can be called chef in terms of training, education, and profession, and all that. And one of them is one of my people, and her name is Lydia Felix, and she worked at the Langham Hotel during my time there, and she just learned how to speak English. And she was actually in my class at Le Cordon Bleu. We have large classes, so we didn't know each other. But she learned English. She comes from Tijuana.
Hmm.
She went to Le Cordon Bleu to get the professional education, which Le Cordon Bleu standards are known for, and she succeeded. Not just that. We became friends and working patriots, and she works for me for many of the projects.
Right.
But she has not only gotten her degree at Le Cordon Bleu with me, she's getting her bachelor's degree right now. She is currently the chief. She's currently the executive instructor for West Covina School District High School.
Hmm.
They have built her $1 million kitchen,
Oh, wow.
and and on top of that, I joined the American Culinary Federation, ACF. That is the professional association if you're going to be in the business in
Hmm.
general. And she became, I was executive director. She became the vice president of our local chapter.
Hmm.
And she I use her as an example. There's someone first generation who understood the value of education, had her hardships and divorce and all that, had three kids, worked full time, smile on her face. She's a Mexican dancing groups and all that. And and she has a certification. And that's one thing that sets some of the people apart in our business. And the certification body is us, the American Culinary Federation, the ACF.
Hmm.
Certification, you may have heard the term certified executive chef, certified sous chef.
Yes. Yes, I have.
We're the body that certifies.
Oh,
She
nice.
received she received her CCE, Certified Culinary Educator. And we're very proud of her because in our chapter, we haven't had that many certifications of anybody in the
Oh,
last few
wow.
years. And she actually went out on her own and got that. She's been with me to our national conventions. We, at our, association, we do that. So we were at the previous ones were in the last, let's say where it was, it's New Orleans.
Uh-huh.
It was, and this year is going to be in Las Vegas. And she's part of that. And in fact, she's going to be a demonstrator for Mexican food
Oh,
at the
nice.
national convention, right? And the
Nice.
national convention, we're also part of what they call World Chefs. It's the World Association, and I'm part of that too. I just came back from Singapore.
Nice.
We have 800 international top chefs who are presidents of their country's association. So it's kind of a major big deal. And I
Oh,
was
of
one of the
course.
five that I helped. I was one of the five that represented the United States. That was kind of an honor.
Oh, wow.
But
That's
yeah,
impressive.
my second Mexican chef, Minnie, who did the cooking that night
Hmm.
that you would. She's from one of the cities down there, first generation, speaks pretty good English, and she graduated from LA Trade Tech. My
Hmm.
school doesn't exist here anymore. We have
Yeah.
16 international locations. And the leading school is Los Angeles Trade Technical College. And that school is also an accredited ACF school. It's the only one left.
Oh, wow.
So when their students graduate, they automatically qualify for certification. It's called a CCC. So that gives them a boost into the industry.
Oh, nice.
Uh, Many, also, we, as part of our local chapter, we have an award ceremony every year. And Lydia Felix, she won the Cutting Edge Award for the chapter, which was a high honor. And Minnie, she won Student Chef of the Year. So they're both award-winning chefs in their own rights. And Minnie is a chef in charge of cafeterias, and she has her own children's program, training program.
Hmm.
And I put her in charge because she's very capable of that. And she called her chef. The young fellow that was with her, if you didn't notice him, his name is Ivan. And these are some of my apprentices. And I'm not sure which country. It's not Mexico.
It's in Central America?
Yeah. And so anyway, he's only 16 or 17. He doesn't speak much English, but he's a good helper. Hire him to help us out there. He's going to high school, Blair High School.
Hmm.
He's interested in becoming into our business. Of course, he has to personally himself get a little bit more established, complete his high school and all that stuff. But we're trying to build an opportunity for our Hispanic cooks who want to become chefs, and one of them is what I call the translation of our material.
Nice.
You know, as you
Because I
probably know,
because because I feel that it's very important that especially when it comes to the younger generation, or maybe for those that are coming out of high school that are undecided, because Spanish United, we, aside from education, we also believe in rehabilitation and preventing social problems from happening, like meaning like
Mhm.
there is a way like to intervene or try to steer the younger generation, especially like the parents who may not know how to raise children because they're kids themselves, to steer them into alternative ways of getting alternative forms of education. I
Mhm.
always try to strive to encourage the younger generation to go to school, finish school, get education, because that's going to open up opportunities. But like you were mentioning, many Hispanics, especially those that have backyards, they're always known for cooking and barbecuing. And I've always tell them that instead of doing that just as a pastime, they could actually turn it into a career. And I feel that it's very important that if Hispanics, particularly the younger generation, because I'm Puerto Rican, and you probably know in New York we have a huge Puerto Rican community out there. I'm not sure you're familiar with Puerto Rican cuisine, but Puerto Ricans, we like to eat. So, it's always important to try to encourage the Latinos to try to make something of themselves, especially in what they like, and especially those that are more inclined to cook or to prepare food, that would be an excellent career to encourage a lot of the younger generation to get into.
Well, one of the things that I was fortunate to have gone to Le Cordon Bleu is the professional standards. And part of that, or a big part of that, is the uniform. There are a lot of cooking schools and culinary colleges. The better ones, the best one that I'm aware of is called CIA, Culinary Institute of America. Second to that was my school, Le Cordon Bleu, and then you've got the Johnson and Wales, and a few other of the colleges have their own programs. One of the things that they really impressed upon us at Le Cordon Bleu is that we represent a brand, we represent the profession. And in terms of respect in the industry, when you say Le Cordon Bleu, most people are familiar
Yes,
with
that's a
that.
very well-known French culinary school. I've seen it,
Yeah,
in West LA.
yeah, and yeah, that was out in Hollywood. And then, of course, Julia Child is a graduate. And it's that kind of a thing that they taught us not just to because all the schools will teach the same techniques about how to cut and dice and and broil and all that. And it's part of the curriculum, but they really don't teach you how to be professional.
Right.
how to look professional, how to act professional. And one of the things I do at my school is I look at their literacy level. And it's been a problem, I think, for a lot of my Hispanic associates, is that their literacy level is maybe not that great.
Right.
So their ability to communicate, read, write, and that kind of thing, is often not strong. My one example, Lydia, my chef, she excels. She speaks almost perfect English. She studies all the time. She's building vocabulary, and she's a good communicator. But she decided to do that, right? And in my school, I tell them as part of the program, I said, we try to lead by example. Unfortunately, we have had the opportunity for better education and all that stuff. But you also have to look at, if we're going to be in uniform representing the profession, it's for a reason, not just because we want to wear white jackets,
Right. Of
you know.
course.
And when we do this whole thing with certification or awards, and I've got quite a few of those, I'm a big believer in promoting yourself if you want to be in the profession. And the first thing I ask, even my fellow chefs who are, much more experienced than me, when they're starting to look at another job, the first thing I ask them is, "Do you have a business card? Does anybody
Right.
know who you are?"
Right.
And then the big thing today, of course, is social media.
Right.
Uh, and I'm a major proponent of that. And I tell them, look, you can be on Instagram, but that's kind of for the kids. If you want to be professionals, Facebook still is the place. And
Right.
you can write content, right? And you can do that. And I try to use my own as an example. Second to
Right.
that,
Right.
I said, look, to promote yourself, make a video because that's the whole world of YouTube that we're in. Make a 5-minute video if you're doing something, even if it is boiling an egg. At least do it. Look at yourself, see how you present yourself on camera, because that's how the world's going to look at you. And to improve yourself, if you're interested, make sure that that's part of your toolbox of how to get better.
Oh,
So I try.
absolutely, absolutely, and I mean that's actually an interesting point that you brought up. Unfortunately, many Hispanics they kind of struggle in that area. Like again, many, not all, but many Hispanics come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and many of them are kind of brought up to be workers, not to be entrepreneurs or business owners or to see themselves just beyond having just a blue collar job. And that's one of the things that we encourage in Spanish United is to look at yourself than what other people see you. Like, if people see you, for example, as just being a janitor, try to look at yourself as possibly being a business owner or being a doctor or having something because again, I feel that the more higher standards that we put on ourselves, the more motivated we are to try to reach those standards. And you actually brought up an interesting point. Like I always have the custom of carrying business cards because people, when they ask me, what do you do? I give them my business card, which has my
Yeah,
logo, like I did with you.
yeah,
It shows legitimacy at the same time, professionalism, and it shows that one is legit. It's not like someone that's saying, yes, I have a business, but I don't have a card because I'm not big yet. It's like it's always important to start somewhere with a card, even if you don't have like an official like building that you own yet. As long as you have a card, people are more willing to talk to you and look for you.
yeah. And it's part of my toolkit of credentials. And the credential, it said, all you have to have is your name and your contact information because you never know if people need you to do something. That's how
Oh,
I started my
absolutely.
my little school. My omelet thing is now a catering company, and that got built because somebody said, can you cater this job fair? And suddenly I'm going, okay, and I went out my first time I did that with this company who does church job fairs. They go to the church and say, like, we can do the job fair for you. We can do the marketing, bring the people, bring the employers, and
Right,
all
right.
that. Yeah,
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with me with my foundation. Like even though we're still on a grassroots level, I manage six chapters. I mean 5 chapters, I'm sorry, 5 chapters in different states, and I have 5 directors that work under me.
yeah,
I always train them, and I always do like weekly meetings,
yeah,
through Zoom, where I always tell them, look, it's always important that you should always have a card on you, have flyers, because let's say, for example, if someone's interested in joining your particular chapter, They got to know that you are legit, that you are professional, and that you are who you say you are. So I always try to encourage them and train them that you always have to have a business card, know how to speak with people, how to market yourself, because it's very important, especially in this day and age, that we have to find ways to market ourselves so that way we could open doors. Like there's been opportunities where just the fact that I had a business card, I was able to open a door that I may have not been able to open previously. So
Right.
it's always important to have that preparation so that way we could succeed in the field or in the area that we want to be in.
Plus, a small caveat to that, I recommend a physical card. I go to a lot of trade show meetings, and often they say, "Well, I have a digital card. I just, click link to your card." And I said, I'd rather have a physical card because I keep them. I have a whole, I've got books of cards. I can actually see a physical card, which also reminds me who I talk to. It also gives me a visual idea of the company or the person itself.
Right.
And that's moving towards digital. One example is I went to a Chinese trade show and at the LA Convention Center a few months ago. 500 vendors. Every
Oh,
one of
wow.
them had boxes of business cards because they
Mhm.
understood the value of that. And when they give you a business card, they hold it in two hands like the Japanese and all that.
Yes, correct.
That's an introduction. That's a personal thing that it's a handshake,
Mhm.
without even touching their hands. And I think that
Exactly.
was, yeah. The other thing I like to bring up is in my school, as part of the building credentials, I said, I belong to the Chamber of Commerce. I said that just doing that helped boost my credentials and credibility, because when you're part of the business community, several thousand business owners, and we have mixers and all that stuff. And in my case, I show up in full uniform, including the chef hat, and they always do a photo, and it's always going to be in their newspaper. And who's the guy that stands out? The guy wearing white in the hat, right?
Exactly.
So, so eventually, I got called. I became the chef for the Chamber of Commerce at some of their events, because they knew cooks, they knew restaurant owners, but they actually didn't know someone who presented himself as a chef.
Mhm.
So that little kind of a gimmicky thing worked in the presentation. If you I don't know if you had a chance to see my Facebook, or
Yes, I
my
did.
other.
I actually got to see a couple of your things on Facebook, actually.
Okay, and I have 700 YouTubes. I take the trouble to do that because I do other activities, not just the chef thing, but
Right, of course.
it's a way to remember yourself what you did. And like example yesterday or today on the 18th. Over the years I've been on Facebook, where they pop up as a memory on the same date. You know that, right? So because this particular date over the past years, I've always been involved in some activity. It
Right.
comes back, right? Whether I'm catering or cooking or doing music or whatever, and that's history, right?
Right.
And that's a good way to remind yourself that either one, you accomplished something, or you should be doing something, or you should not be doing something. But it's another tool, because that's the world we live in.
Right, of course, absolutely. Like I always get those reminders, especially when I've done events in the past. I always get like a little memory that, this is what you did on this day. And I always like to share it too, like you said, to remind myself of where I want to be and what can I do, changes that I could make, and to encourage others within my foundation to do the same thing. Well, anyway, William, we kind of got to the end of our time, but I wanted to tell you thank you so much for being on the show and for my listeners. Spanish United is on all social media platforms. We are on Spanish United YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, Instagram. Anyone that wants to make a donation to Spanish United, we are a 501 503 nonprofit. Anything that one donates is used to help individuals within the community. And again, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. And when I finish, I will definitely send you the link, and you could share it with, all of your social media platforms. And it was awesome to having you as a guest.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Likewise, have yourself a good evening.
You too.
Bye bye.